It was 11:30 at night. Throughout the upscale defense neighborhood, strings of lights glittered, but inside Seth Said Ur Rehman's mansion, there was an uncanny stillness. A cold breeze drifted in through the windows that overlooked the sea, yet it brought no comfort, only the sense that some shadow of fear had slipped inside with it. A crack of thunder shook the sky, and a flash of lightning turned the room briefly blue. In that instant, Ayesha, seated in her wheelchair at the center of the room, closed her eyes. She had been unable to walk for 2 years. A hidden injury to her spine held her firmly back from life's forward motion. The doctors had declared her permanently crippled, yet tonight, inexplicably, she felt a nameless dread fluttering in her chest, as if something momentous was about to happen. She was staring toward the window when a soft knock came at the door. It wasn't one of the servants. None of them ever entered without formal permission. This knock was tentative, respectful, and utterly unfamiliar. Ayesha pressed the bell. When the door opened, her breath caught. A man of middle age stood there. Wheat-colored skin, a neatly trimmed beard, simple but immaculate clothes, and a small wooden satchel in his hand. His voice was calm as he bowed and greeted her. "Assalamu alaikum, madame. My name is Javed Ansari. I have been assigned to care for you." Ayesha sighed, weary and suspicious, and looked away. "If you're like all the other nurses, please finish your work quickly and leave." "I don't talk to people." Without a word, Javed nodded, took out oil, warmed it in his palms, and began to massage her feet. There was no pity in his touch, no questioning or coercion, just quiet, unhurried movements. 15 minutes passed in the hush of ticking clocks. Finally, Aisha whispered, "People like you usually prattle on trying to pry a patient's secrets out. You haven't asked me a single question." Javed's voice was soft yet deep. "Madam, I did not come to make you talk. I came only to ease the pain you hide. Anything else that follows will be a bonus." For the first time in years, Aisha felt seen as more than a helpless patient. He did not pity her, nor did he regard her as a burden. When Javed gently draped a towel over her feet, she dared to look at him and asked, "What time will you come tomorrow morning?" He smiled and replied, "Just after Fajr, when the light returns." Then he slipped out of the room as quietly as a breeze, leaving behind not emptiness, but a gentle confidence she had not known she needed. Morning arrived with the first sunbeams slipping through the windows. Aisha awoke as usual, but her heart felt strangely restless, perhaps stirred by last night's conversation, or by the calm strength hidden in Javed's silence. Just after dawn, exactly on schedule, she heard that same soft, polite knock. Javed entered carrying a small thermos and an old book. Without preamble, he pressed a heater button and laid a blanket over her feet. Then he opened the thermos, releasing the warm fragrance of cinnamon, ginger, and fennel into the room. "My mother used to say," he smiled as he poured the spiced brew into a cup, "that this coffee warms not only the body but the heart, too." Ayesha took the cup in silence and sipped. The hot liquid felt as if it were gently melting away the frozen walls inside her, awakening something long dormant. Javed resumed massaging her feet, this time with a deliberate, soothing rhythm, as if he understood that his touch was therapy not just for her body but for her spirit as well. At last, Aisha spoke for the first time. "Where do you come from?" she asked. Javed smiled softly. "I'm from Khairpur," he said, "a small village in Sindh, full of neem trees, the scent of fresh earth, and the call to prayer echoing from the mosque." "Then why did you come to Karachi?" she pressed. He looked at her gently. "Life's thread is tied to my daughter. She's studying here. Wherever I go, I always return to where she is." Aisha studied his face. In his eyes, there was an uncanny sense of kinship, as though he had known her for years, but had only just revealed himself. "Have you ever thought of going abroad? Europe? America?" she asked, testing his accent. "I've been many times," he laughed quietly. "But the peace you find in your own soil, you won't discover it in any grand hospital or luxury hotel." That afternoon, Javed taught her a few gentle yoga stretches alongside their usual exercises. Ayesha followed his guidance hesitantly, but to her surprise, she soon felt a glow of light spread through her shoulders and neck. Her breathing grew steady and even. Javed explained that mindful breathwork rejuvenates every system in the body. My wife used to say, he added softly, that once you learn to breathe properly, you learn how to live. Aisha's heart skipped. You were married? She whispered. He paused. Yes, she passed away from cancer 6 years ago. Our daughter was still small then. Since her mother's death, I have had to be both father and mother to her. Silence fell between them. Outside, the waves met the shore in a muted murmur. Inside, something had tapped gently on Ayesha's own heart. Karachi evenings held a particular magic, an enchantment that drifted in on the sea breeze and reached deep into the soul. That evening, Javed arrived with something new, a soft blanket, a small satchel, and a curious sparkle in his eye. Ma'am, he said, I want to take you out today. Ayesha started. Out? Where? He smiled. To the seashore, where wind, water, and a touch of the past meet. Hesitant, she adjusted her scarf and studied herself in the mirror. The girl who once climbed mountains now sat wrapped in a wheelchair, offering only a faint smile. Javed had already arranged a special van complete with a hydraulic ramp for her chair. When the door swung open, Ayesha saw birds wheeling across a vast sky and wondered, for the first time in years, if she might ever feel free again. Along the drive, they rode in companionable silence, the kind that neither weighs on the heart nor demands conversation, but simply confirms shared presence. At the beach, Javed applied a special coating to her wheelchair's tires so they would not sink into the sand. A warm gust of salty air brushed Aisha's face. She closed her eyes and drew in a deep breath. She was, at last, sitting beneath an open sky, far from the walls of her own home. Javed spread a small mat on the sand and positioned her chair on it. Then he opened a compact lunchbox to reveal steaming chicken biryani, cooling yogurt, and tangy mango chutney. This recipe is from my village's matriarch, he said with a gentle grin. Ayesha tasted a spoonful, and it was as if the flavor drew a bright line back to another time and place. This taste, it's the fragrance of a different era, she murmured. After they ate, Javed reached into his satchel and produced an old camera. This belonged to a childhood friend, he explained. Today I want to capture your portrait. Under the fading amber light of Karachi's evening, Ayesha sat poised, ready, perhaps, to discover how far her newfound freedom might carry her. Ayesha started and looked at him in surprise. A portrait of me? Why? Javed answered quietly. So that you can see your smile is still alive. She remained silent, but when he raised the camera's lens, she gently turned her face away and allowed a small, shy smile to break across her lips. The click of the shutter felt as though it had captured time itself. At that moment, a little boy came running up and sat beside Javed. Uncle, do you know how to fly a kite? He asked. Javed laughed and replied, A kite? That's an old childhood weakness of mine. He took the kite from the boy, untangled its string, and released it into the breeze off the sea. Watching the kite dance against the sky, Aisha's eyes brightened with spontaneous delight. She laughed, fully and freely, her heart opening at last. Passers-by paused to smile at her. Returning to her side, Javed said, Ma'am, your laughter has breathed new life into this beach. Ayesha breathed in the salty air and whispered, With you here, I feel myself again, as if something heavy has been lifted from inside me. A few moments of peaceful quiet passed before she ventured, If I could ever walk again, would you take me back to your village? Javed looked into her eyes with gentle intensity. You may go anywhere with me. I'll show you the well in Khairpur where my late wife first said yes, and the shore where my daughter took her first steps. Ayesha lowered her gaze and then softly asked, Could I become a part of your life? One day? Maybe? Every day? He was silent for a heartbeat, then placed his hand over hers. Life's choices are rarely easy, he said. But when they spring from truth, they become blessings. That evening, the sun slipped into the sea, wrapping the sky in shades of crimson and gold. Two people from very different worlds sat side by side on a weathered bench, poised at the threshold of a new journey. When they returned to the mansion, every step down the corridor bore witness to the change in both of them. In her room, Javed draped a soft blanket over Aisha's shoulders and set the framed photograph on her pillow. "This is you, as you are, alive, beautiful, whole." Aisha gazed at the picture and a single tear traced down her cheek, not one of sorrow, but of quiet acceptance. They paused there in silence. The scent of salt water had been left behind, but inside Aisha, fresh winds of hope were blowing. Gently, Javed wheeled her back toward the hallway. Evening shadows stretched long and distant thunder rumbled in the sky. He placed the frame beside her pillow and whispered, "Let this memory bear witness to your smile." But their peace was abruptly shattered by the intercom's urgent buzz at the mansion gate. A frantic servant announced, "Ma'am, Seth Sahib has returned." Aisha's heart froze. She knew his arrival was unforeseen, and she knew all too well how he would react to this new atmosphere. Moments later, heavy footsteps thundered behind the curtains. The door swung open to reveal Seth Saeed ur Rahman, clad in a black sherwani and khaki shawl, striding into the room. By his side stood his longtime partner, Naveed Mir, whose stern face still bore that familiar glint of irony. Seth Sahib swept his gaze across the scene. Javed seated beside Aisha's wheelchair, the small table with an empty thermos, 2 spoons, and the solitary photo frame. His face went ashen. "What is all this?" he demanded, his voice exploding like thunder. "I was away only a few days. And here you are taking pictures with a servant?" Aisha tried to speak, but the words stuck in her throat. Naveed Mir stepped forward, his voice mocking. "Seth Sahib, times have changed. Daughters now choose their own caregivers and their own hearts." Javed rose to his feet, his face a mask of restrained patience. "Seth Sahib, I have never crossed any boundary with your daughter. My intentions are pure. Everything I have done with respect." Seth Saeed raised a hand, silencing him. "Javed, intent or no, you are an employee. You have no right to be this close to my daughter. Your contract does not allow it." For the first time, Aisha steadied herself. Gripping the wheelchair's handles, she said, "Abba, you taught me self-respect. Now that I feel a moment of happiness, will you keep watch over that too?" Naveed laughed. "Oh ho, our daughter is ready for rebellion." A flicker of softness crossed Seth Sahib's stern features, but he forced it away. "Javed, your services are terminated effective immediately. Do not come to the mansion from tomorrow onward. Your salary and dues will be cleared." Silently, Javed bowed his head and turned to leave. His footsteps echoed down the corridor like the breaking of a vow. "Javed," Aisha called, almost against her will. He paused but did not look back. "If you go," she confessed in a trembling voice, "I will never speak to anyone again. I don't want to lose you." Javed finally lifted his head. "If love is real, doors do not close. I will go. But I will pray that you find the freedom you deserve." Seth Sahib's face hardened into stone. Naveed quipped, "Well, the drama is over. Now even servants turn into poets." Javed said nothing. He put on his shoes and walked toward the door. Zainab, who had watched everything unfold, rushed forward and grasped her father's hand. "Abu, you did nothing wrong. I'm proud you served with all your heart." That same night, Aisha returned to her room and retrieved the photograph taken on the beach, the one capturing her laughter and Javed's gentle gaze. The same soft but restless emotion shone in her eyes as she pressed the picture to her chest and whispered, "Oh Allah, if this bond is ordained by you, protect it." Silence filled the room, broken only by the steady thump of her heartbeat, carrying a prayer more insistent than love alone. Part 5. It was the dead of night. Every window of the mansion lay cloaked in darkness. Zainab stood in her room before Javed's empty wardrobe. On a chair lay his well-worn diary, which he often used to write late into the night. Hesitantly, she opened it and found tucked inside a single photograph, the beach scene, Aisha laughing as Javed watched her. Beneath it was one line, "Sometimes silence says it all." In Aisha's room, sleep was nowhere to be found. She sat holding the photograph as if time itself had paused. When the first call to prayer of morning rose, she turned her wheelchair toward the Qibla and for the first time in many days raised her hands in supplication. "O Allah, if this man is meant for me, then ease his path." With her eyes closed, she made a decision. She would no longer remain silent. At dawn, she sent a message to the servant. "Tell Abba I wish to speak to him alone." Seth Said received it in surprise, but after a moment's thought, he agreed to meet her in the library. There, after a long silence, Aisha finally began to speak. "Abba," Aisha began, her voice trembling but steady, "I have watched you labor all my life. You gave me everything, except the freedom my heart yearned for. When I tried to smile, you taught me decorum. When I sought love, you showed me boundaries." Seth Said sat silent for a moment, then replied softly, "I only ever wanted what was best for you." With tears glistening in her eyes, Aisha pressed on. "Sometimes love is more essential than mere goodness, Abba. Javed gave me hope to live again. No pity, no ulterior motives. Will you deny your daughter the very thing that is bringing her back to life?" Her father's face clouded briefly, but he said nothing. Aisha laid the beach photograph before him, saying nothing further. He studied it long and finally closed his eyes. That afternoon, a police jeep screeched to a halt at the gate. An officer strode straight to the library. "Seth Sahib, we need to speak with you urgently," he announced. Aisha, seated nearby, listened as the officer continued. "Your business partner, Naveed Mir, has been detained on charges of corruption, money laundering, and extortion. We have learned he pressured your daughter into marriage, disguising it as a business deal for financial gain." Seth Sahib's face turned ashen. Aisha leaned forward, voice firm. "Abba, truth may arrive late, but it always dispels darkness." The officer added, "We also need a statement from Javed Ansari. He attempted to mediate in this matter. Could you help us contact him?" After a brief pause, Seth Sahib picked up the phone himself. He dialed Javed's number, and as soon as the call was answered, he said, "Javed, just, if you're listening, please return. We need to hear your side. As a human being, as part of this family." That very evening, Javed arrived back in Karachi. At the mansion gate, Zainab ran to him and threw her arms around his neck. Inside, Seth Sahib paused in surprise, but then motioned him in. "Come, sit. We have things to say tonight that should have been said years ago." Late that night, as every window of the mansion shone with lamplight, Zainab stood in her bedroom doorway beside Javed's empty wardrobe. On a chair lay his well-worn diary. In Aisha's room, sleep was far away. She held the beach photograph as though time had stopped. When the first call to prayer of dawn rang out, she turned her wheelchair toward the Qibla and raised her hands in dua. "O Allah, if this person is destined for me, ease his way." With her eyes closed, she made a decision. She would no longer remain silent. At first light, she sent word to her father, "Ask Abba to meet with me, just the two of us." Seth Said, surprised, agreed and went to the library. After a long, tense silence, Aisha spoke again. "Abba, I owe you gratitude for all you've done. But I also deserve a chance to choose my own happiness." He listened in quiet, and at last his voice softened. "Javed, I doubted you, and that doubt blinded me. But time has opened my eyes. I now ask you to return, not as an employee, but as a member of our family." Javed bowed his head respectfully. "Sir, I have always served within the bounds of respect. If you offer me this place from your heart, I will embrace it not as a burden, but as a responsibility." Seth Sahib reached into his pocket and produced an old ring, the ring of his late wife. Holding it out, he said, "This belonged to my beloved. I want you to place it on Aisha's finger, as a vow, as a trust." Aisha's eyes brimmed with tears. She extended her hand, and Javed gently slid the ring onto her finger. For a heartbeat, the entire room was hushed. Then Zainab began to clap, and one by one the household staff and even Seth Sahib's old friends broke into warm smiles. In the soft glow of that night, an old wound was healed, and a new chapter began. Seth Said summoned the family lawyer and had the power of attorney documents brought forward. "From now on, Javed Ansari will be the guardian of my daughter's health, finances, and decisions, no one else." The lawyer placed the papers on the desk, and Javed signed without hesitation. Everything was now official and clear. That very night, they held a small walima in the garden for close friends, relatives, and representatives of the charities they supported. Strings of traditional lanterns hung between the trees, and the feast included fragrant biryani, sizzling karahi meat, and rose-flavored gulab jamun. Zainab played guitar and recited a poem. Love is the lamp that burns on, even through the fiercest storm. After the guests departed, Aisha and Javed sat together in a quiet corner of the lawn. He turned to her and softly asked, "Do you remember when you said that if you could ever walk again, you would come with me to my village?" She laughed and nodded. "Yes, and now I'm ready." A warm smile spread across his face. "Then tomorrow we leave for Khairpur. The air there, the earth, the light. It will give this new life of yours its true beginning." When morning came, their van was packed with only the essentials: Ayesha's wheelchair, a new walking cane, and a few personal belongings. Seth Sahib hugged his daughter tightly. "Go build your own world," he whispered. "Know that your father is no longer a barrier, but your shadow, ever by your side." In Khairpur, the dusty lanes of Javed's childhood greeted them, lined with neem trees and flanked by an ancient haveli. Ayesha was enchanted by the village's simplicity and warmth. Women draped her shoulders in hand-printed ajrak scarves, children offered her paper boats to float down the stream, and everywhere she felt a sense of belonging she had never known before. That evening, Javed guided her to the old well where he had first heard his late wife say yes. They sat silently on its cool stone edge as he looked up at the sky. "Noreen," he whispered, "if you can hear me, look. I have kept my promise. No one can ever take your place, but today my heart is at peace, for what I have now is respect and light." Aisha reached for his hand. "We are all travelers on the road of vows," she said softly, "and perhaps you are the most beautiful resting place I have found." The next morning was particularly magical. Sunlight filtered through neem branches into the courtyard. Birds sang in the trees. A gentle breeze carried the earthy scent of fresh-tilled soil. Javed scooped fresh yogurt into a clay pot while Aisha emerged from the house in her wheelchair, determination shining on her face. Zainab followed, carrying a simple wooden cane. "Didi," she said, "Abba said you can try using this today, if you'd like." Aisha paused, considering, then nodded. Javed's chest tightened with emotion. "We'll start very slowly. There's no rush," he promised in a gentle tone. They positioned Aisha's chair on a soft mat spread across the courtyard floor. Javed helped secure her belt, and Zainab handed her the cane. "Just focus on straightening your knees," he instructed. Aisha drew in a steady breath and shifted her weight onto her feet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her left foot twitched, and Javed couldn't hide his delight. The second step was harder, but she pressed on. Sweat beaded on her brow, yet her eyes blazed with fearless determination. On the third step, she rose fully to her feet. Javed caught her gently, and Zainab erupted into applause. The other women of the estate gathered, offering prayers and blessings. Zainab lifted her phone and recorded the moment. By evening, that video had spread to every corner of the village. The local schoolteacher, moved by Aisha's triumph, declared that the entire village would hold a celebration the very next day. "Our daughter is standing again," she spoke at the school assembly. On the day of the celebration, the entire village gathered in the central field. Aisha was garlanded with flowers and draped in a traditional ajrak shawl. A small stage had been set up for Javed, Aisha, and Zainab. To the rhythm of the dhol, the children performed a vibrant Sindhi folk dance. Tears of joy welled up in Aisha's eyes. The village's elderly grandmother, whom everyone called Nani, stepped forward and kissed Aisha's forehead. "My child," she said, "you have honored this soil. When you first came, we thought you were a delicate city girl. But today, you are our pride." That evening, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, Javed led Aisha back to the old well and seated her on its stone edge. "Do you remember," he asked, "you said that if you learned to walk again, this would be the first picture you took?" He lifted his old camera and focused on her. Aisha looked up at the sky, spread her arms wide, and rose fully to her feet. Click! The shutter clicked, forever preserving that moment of triumph. That night, Javed wrote in his notebook, "I have seen life defeated, then learned to triumph again on the wings of hope. When someone's feet falter, they don't need words, only companionship." He set down his pen and gazed at the moon, as though seeking Noreen's blessing. In the next room, Aisha lay on the mat, staring up at the stars. She whispered to herself, "I am born again. This time I will decide where to go, with whom to live, and how to live." And she smiled, a full, peaceful, contented smile. Those 15 days in Kharpur felt like a dream. Yet Aisha and Javed knew the real journey was only beginning. When Javed proposed establishing a center of hope, Aisha's eyes lit up. "If someone like me can be given a second chance at life," she said, "then I want to be the door that opens for them." The return trip to Karachi was filled with emotion. On the way back, Javed showed her his old files, his proposed physiotherapy plans for disabled patients. Aisha said, "Now we must build a place where hope flows from every wall." Upon their return, Seth Saeed dedicated 3 canals of land on the outskirts of the city for the center. On the first day of construction, Javed laid the first brick by hand while Aisha sprinkled water over the foundation pot. Zainab painted the inaugural message on the wall, "Here, steps that once ceased will walk anew." The center's construction was powered not only by laborers but by heart, former patients, charity workers, and dozens of young volunteers. Each evening, Javed and Aisha held planning meetings. Rain or power outages could not deter their resolve. When opening day arrived, word had spread throughout the city. A simple sign reading "Center of Hope" adorned the gate. A gentle ramp led into a lush courtyard beyond which stood modern therapy equipment and a small library. It was the realization of a dream. Aisha took up the same wooden cane that supported her first steps. With a determined smile, she lifted herself onto the ramp, took 2 measured steps, and cut the ribbon. Everyone applauded. Wahab, the first patient to walk again with a walker, stepped up to the microphone. "This center is more than treatment. It is dignity," he declared. "I thought I was only physically weak, but here I learned how to live." Javed joined him on the stage. "We have made service our devotion, not our profession," he said. "This center belongs to all who have stopped, who have scattered, but still long to be whole again." Aisha's eyes glistened as she watched baby Noor nestled in Zainab's arms, imagining the next generation carrying forward this message. After everyone departed, Javed and Aisha were sitting in the garden. Drops from the fountain struck the marble with a soft plinking sound. Aisha sighed, "All of this we've built. Will it ever come to an end?" Javed smiled and replied, "Works born of love never end. They live on in future souls." A few days later, they launched a new initiative, the Mobile Clinic. Javed purchased a high-roof van emblazoned with the Center of Hope logo. Every week they drove to a new settlement, offering free therapy, medicines, and encouragement. Aisha often accompanied him. She would hear the children's stories and smile and pray with the mothers. Once in an old neighborhood, a little boy looked up at her and asked, "Are you a doctor or an angel?" Aisha patted his head and answered, "Neither doctor nor angel, just a human who knows how vital it can be to hold someone's hand." By then, the center had become more than an institution. It was a movement. Media coverage, documentaries, and front-page articles had turned Javed and Aisha into symbols of hope. But with fame came threats. One afternoon, while the mobile clinic was camped in Lyari, 2 men on a motorcycle approached the team and demanded brusquely, "Where does your funding come from? What's your agenda?" Javed calmly explained that the center served only humanitarian causes and held no political ties. The men said nothing further and rode off, leaving a cloud of suspicion behind them. That very night, Javed received an anonymous warning call. "Be careful, some people resent your success." The next morning, Aisha sat at her desk and said firmly, "If we walk in truth, we need not fear, but we must be vigilant." She met with the security team, ordered cameras installed around the building, and directed that every record be digitized. A few days later, at 2 o'clock in the morning, the alarm shattered the silence. There was a fire at the center. Javed, Ayesha, and Zainab raced to the scene. The fire brigade had already been summoned, but by the time they arrived, half the library was ablaze. Coughing in the smoke, Javed dashed inside, gathering as many files as he could. Zainab screamed, "Abu, come out!" But he didn't emerge until a firefighter carried him out, unconscious. He spent 2 critical days in the hospital. Ayesha sat by his bedside reading Surah Yasin over and over. "O Allah, we have served your creation. Be our protector now," she prayed. On the 3rd day, Javed opened his eyes. The nurse explained that his lungs had been damaged, but that he was out of danger. Ayesha grasped his hand and whispered, "If you had died, my very foundation would have shattered." He smiled weakly. "I cannot go anywhere without you now. We have built something called hope, and I intend for it to live on forever." News of the attack ignited an outpouring of support online. Citizens volunteered as guards to protect the center. Former patients, people whose lives had been transformed, signed up for security duty. The government announced a grant and international NGOs offered assistance. Investigations soon uncovered something more shocking still. The arsonists were 2 young men who admitted they acted at the behest of a powerful businessman, the same man who once partnered with Seth Said, now consumed by bitterness. Seth Said himself went to the police headquarters to record his statement. "My daughter's dreams were attacked. I will wage a legal battle on every front to see justice done." His words were broadcast on television channels, and the public applauded them. When Javed returned to the center, a faint weariness showed on his face, but his resolve remained unshaken. Ayesha sat beside him and said, "Now we must not only rebuild, but also fight the mindset that fears service." Javed nodded, and together they launched a new campaign called the Caravan of Light. Its aim was to establish branches of the center in rural areas where facilities were practically non-existent. The first camp opened in a remote Baluchistan village. Ayesha took her cane with her and in her inaugural address declared, "Light is that which never allows itself to weaken, even in darkness." That evening, as they settled into the van for the journey home, Javed remarked, "I believe this journey is not merely physical, but spiritual. Wherever we go, we bring not just medicine, but prayer as well." Ayesha looked up at the sky and said, "And you are the very foundation of that prayer, Javed." A new sense of purpose flowed through Karachi's cool breeze. Branches of the Center of Hope now spanned all 4 provinces. Javed and Ayesha had ceased to be merely healer and patient. They had become a beacon, an example of sacrifice, service, love, and endurance. Today was special. The United Nations was designating the center as an international health home of hope. To celebrate, a special ceremony was held at the mansion. The lawn was draped in white and green lights, and a banner read, "Where suffering ceased, there hope was born." Zainab and little Noor sparkled in matching blue outfits. Javed wore a white sherwani. Ayesha donned a pale green lehenga embroidered in gold. Their faces radiated tranquility and dignity. During the event, doctors, social workers, and international delegates delivered speeches praising the center's work. Yet everyone held their breath for the moment when Javed and Ayesha would ascend the stage. When they did, the audience watched in silent awe. Ayesha walking unaided, step by step, supported lightly by Javed's arm. Tears filled many eyes. Taking the microphone, Javed said, "When we began this journey, there was no destination and no map. Only the intention never to leave anyone alone. And today, as Ayesha stands here beside me, I feel that Allah has accepted our intention." Ayesha took a deep breath and added, "From my wheelchair, I forged a friendship with life." Javed held my hand and taught me to live again. We all face trials, but those who support us become our truest bonds. The applause erupted, lights glittered, and chants of hope filled the air. The next morning was comparatively quiet. The celebration had ended, but in Javed and Ayesha's hearts, alongside a sense of peace, lingered one question. Was this journey complete, or was it only the beginning? Javed sat in the garden, flipping through his old diary. He read aloud a line he had written. "Once a step is taken, the next follows on its own." Ayesha brought him a cup of tea and asked, "What are you thinking about?" Smiling, he replied, "Another branch, in the northern areas. There's still no center there." Surprised, Ayesha asked, After all this, how does your passion remain so strong? Javed looked up at the sky and said, because some dreams do not live on strength alone, but on prayer. Over the next few weeks, they raised funds, acquired land, and began construction, this time at the foothills of the mountains, where the cold bites but the spirit stays warm. Just as the opening day neared, an unexpected crisis struck. On her return from school, Zainab fell ill with a fever that spiked within 2 days. Doctors diagnosed a rare viral infection treatable only in Lahore. Ayesha and Javed were devastated. Those who had healed so many were now powerless for their own child. On the flight to Lahore, Ayesha gripped Javed's hand. "Will we all be okay?" she asked. With eyes closed, he replied, "If our intention is pure, even hardship becomes worship." They kept vigil at Zainab's bedside for 3 days. On the 4th morning, she opened her eyes and murmured, "Mama, I see light, a beautiful light." Tears streamed down Javed's face as the doctor confirmed her infection was under control and that she would make a full recovery. In that moment, Javed prayed, "O Allah, if you test us, grant us certainty. We do not fear the trial, but the doubt." After Zainab's full recovery, the family returned to Karachi, their courage doubled. The Northern Branch's opening ceremony was quiet yet profoundly moving. Local children, elders, and patients, seeing hope personified for the first time, gathered. Javed said, "We have come not just to give you medicine, but to give you the confidence that you are not alone." On the drive home, Aisha asked, "Javed, what if our journey ever stops?" He looked at her and said, "Then we'll write our own story, so others can read it and begin their own journey." Aisha laughed. "Then it will be the most beautiful book of all." A few months later, a documentary about their lives, titled The Light That Remained, won international awards. Javed and Aisha were invited to speak at the United Nations. On that stage, Aisha said, "We came from different lands and bore different wounds. But the moment we joined hands, those lands and wounds became one purpose: service." Returning home that evening, they found painted on their wall in bright colors, "Mama, Baba, be the light." Reading it aloud, Javed said, "If anything in life is precious, it is these 3 words." That night, they walked along the shore where their first photo was taken. Aisha's steps were now sure and steady. Under the moonlit sky, hand in hand, they walked in silence as the waves lapped at their feet, nature itself seeming to salute them. Finally, Javed asked, "Aisha, if I had never come into your life, could you have embraced it like this?" Pausing, she gazed at the heavens, then met his eyes and said, "No, I don't think so. Because life revealed its path only once, and that path was you." She then opened her little diary, whose cover read, "Where suffering ceased, their love found breath." Together, they stepped forward toward the sea, into whatever journey lay ahead.